Part 57. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 561. Li Qing frowned, and felt extremely disgusted with his daily life. He was always making trouble. Damn, I'll blow it up with an atomic bomb sooner or later. He stepped forward and held Anbei Yingzi's roundness from behind. What plan is mentioned above? Anbei Yingzi was a little distracted by Li Qing's big hand, and said in a trembling voice with a slightly hoarse voice, "It seems, it's called something called Super Kamioka Detector, don't move, this plan seems to have started in 1982. Li Qing raised his eyebrows, it's been more than 20 years. Anbei Yingzi covered Li Qing's hand to prevent him from moving, and continued, now this project has spent nearly 10 billion yen from the Bank of Japan. This plan has another name, called the Pure Water Plan. Li Qing was stunned when he heard the name, and he remembered that he seemed to have seen related reports on the internet in his previous life. Pure Water Plan. The plan says to study neutrinos. Anbei Yingzi pointed to the plan and said. But Li Qing didn't believe what was said above at all. Just because Anbei Jianyi put the plan in the secret compartment, this matter is not a simple scientific research. Actually, I have heard about this matter. Anbei Yingzi turned her head and glanced at Li Qing. Looking at Anbei Yingzi with a rosy face, Li Qing smiled and pulled her into his arms. Oh? Then tell me. Since this matter is not only known by Anbei Yingzi, but also known by the elites in Zairizhi. Well, this thing is built in the abandoned mine 1,000 meters deep from the surface of the Kamioka Shijizumi mine. It is said that pure water is used to study neutrinos. I don't know much about it. It's all hearsay. We don't know what it is used for. Anbei Yingzi was a little numb after being pinched by Li Qing. She collapsed on the bed involuntarily, and her breathing was short and rapid. Li Qing smiled. These were all smoke bombs sent by the Zairizhi government. He estimated that Zairizhi must be holding back a big move. But now is not the time to investigate this matter. After the secret library matter is resolved, he will let people investigate what Zairizhi is going to do. Looking at Anbei Yingzi, whose eyes were gradually blurry, Li Qing smiled. Anbei Yingzi glared at him with a reproachful look, her charm flowing between her eyebrows and eyes. This is the good thing about young women. She can understand a movement or even a look. Li Qing couldn't help but speak. Even so, he didn't forget the business. Yingzi, there is one more thing you need to pay attention to. Help me find out how to enter the Bank of Japan vault. Hiss. Li Qing immediately stopped talking, and felt like he was wandering in the clouds. Yeah, Anbei heard Li Qing's instructions and made a sound to indicate his agreement. It was unknown how long it took to end the battle. Anbei Yingzi wanted to kiss Li Qing. Ahem, go brush your teeth, Li Qing pushed. Do you dislike me? Anbei Yingzi's eyes began to water. No, I just can't bear to kill. The two fell asleep, and when they opened their eyes again, it was already noon. Anbei Yingzi woke up first, and when she saw Li Qing naked beside her, she remembered the absurdity of last night. Hey, Qing sang. Wake up, it's dawn, you have to leave. Anbei Yingzi shook Li Qing's arm anxiously. Li Qing rubbed his sleepy eyes, so early? What are you doing? Yingzi, it's like we're having an affair. Anbei Yingzi glared at him angrily, and then looked at her wedding photo with Anbei Kenichi hanging on the wall. It's obviously an affair. However, Li Qing still couldn't resist Anbei Yingzi's request. Okay, put these things back in the safe, and note that this is taken from the secret compartment. Li Qing stood up and put on his clothes, and handed the information on the bedside table to Anbei Yingzi. Anbei Yingzi looked at Li Qing in surprise, and paused. You won't take these away? Li Qing chuckled and touched Anbei Yingzi's face. Silly, if I take them away, Anbei Kenichi will definitely know that it was you who took them. Then you will be in danger. Feeling the warmth of Li Qing's palm, Anbei Yingzi's eyes were full of emotion. Compared with the cold Anbei Kenichi, Li Qing is simply the most perfect man. Not only is he strong in that aspect, but he also puts himself in her shoes. But then Li Qing's hand began to be dishonest and started to slide down directly. No, time. Although Anbei Yingzi also wanted it, it was already light outside. If Li Qing went out later, he might not be discovered. Hee, I'll bring a camera next time, Li Qing smiled. Anbei Yingzi bit her rosy lips, her eyes full of charm. No, it will leave evidence. Li Qing looked at her strangely. What? I mean to bring a camera next time and take pictures of all these materials. Anbei Yingzi realized that she had thought wrongly, and glared at Li Qing with red ears. Go quickly. Li Qing smiled, picked up his coat, and pointed to the messy bed. Pick these up, by the way, don't forget what I told you. Don't worry about your father's affairs, he and I are brothers now, and I won't embarrass him. Anbei Yingzi didn't react at first, and when Li Qing walked out the door, she remembered that Li Qing asked her to call him dad last night. Asshole, Anbei Yingzi laughed and cursed in a low voice towards the door. Lying on the bed again, she could still smell Li Qing's body odor on the pillow next to her, but her heart was as sweet as honey. She couldn't help but pull the pillow into her arms and sniff it deeply, muttering, I don't know when he will come next time. Li Qing walked out of the villa door. With his perception, he didn't find anyone secretly observing him, and went straight into the Rolls-Royce parked beside the road. Oh, brother, you are here. Crow stretched in the car. He and Zhang Dongzia were afraid of any accidents, so they kept watch for Li Qing all night. Well, go back. Anbei Jianyi's matter will take a few days. Li Qing knew that Anbei Yingzi's investigation would also take time. Until now, they still didn't know the specific structure of the last line of defense, the vault door. After Li Qing left for about 2 hours, Anbei Yingzi packed up everything and slowly walked out of the villa. Why walk slowly? Because the battle last night was too intense, causing swelling and pain in some parts, well, cheeks too. Anbei Yingzi felt that her cheeks were also a little sore. It was already noon when she arrived at the hospital. She pushed open the door of the ward and saw Matsushita Arita sitting on the bed eating lunch. Is Sakurako here? Matsushita Arita smiled at her baby daughter. Father, you're awake. Anbei Sakurako looked at Matsushita Arita with surprise, threw her bag, and walked a few steps to Matsushita Arita's side. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 562. Well, it's okay. I woke up yesterday. Matsushita Arita touched Anbei Yingzi's head and comforted her. Yingzi, please sell the shares of Panasonic Group to Tanaka Fisheries Company now. Tanaka Susan is a handbag company he secretly established. Now that things have come to this, he has no choice but to transfer the assets of the Panasonic Group now to at least leave something to his children. No need, father. I have already talked with the mysterious major shareholder. He only pays dividends and does not participate in the management of the group. Anbei Yingzi said happily. Yes, not only have we talked about it, but we have also become intimate with each other. We have long been attracted to him and he to me. Matsushita Arita frowned. Impossible. If he were the major shareholder, he would kick the Panasonic family out of the management without mercy. If you don't believe me, call and ask. Anbei Yingzi trusted Li Qing. After all, the two knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. Matsushita Arita thought for a while, picked up his cell phone and called his secretary. What? The other party cancelled the reopening of the board of directors? Is this true? Matsushita Arita took the phone and looked at his daughter in surprise. He didn't expect that his daughter could convince the other party. In fact, he didn't know that it was his daughter who had convinced the mysterious major shareholder. Is this person a fool? Matsushita Arita put down his phone and asked doubtfully. "Oh, father, isn't this bad? How can I be a fool?" Anbei Yingzi pouted. Matsushita Arita couldn't figure it out and simply stopped thinking about it, but he seemed to think of something again and suppressed the smile on his face. "Kenichi Yasubu didn't do anything, right?" Anbei Yingzi's face froze when she heard Anbei Kenichi's name, and the smile on her face disappeared. "While you were in a coma, he tried to get involved in Panasonic Group's equity, but I fooled him." Bang! Matsushita Arita slammed his fist on the table. Sure enough, the Anbei family is still evil. He now extremely regrets finding such a husband for his daughter. Although he knew that the Anbei family had no good intentions, he still agreed to the marriage between the two families for the sake of the development of the Panasonic Group. "I'm sorry for making you feel wronged." Matsushita Arita also felt sorry for his daughter and said with guilt. Anbei Yingzi shook her head. To enjoy the wealth brought by her family, she had to pay something. This was something she had understood since she was a child. She also wanted to live a good life with Kenichi Anbei at the beginning, although she didn't love Kenichi Anbei either. But Anbei Kenichi's restlessness made her completely disappointed. Fortunately, Li Qing was like an iron rod in her life, supporting her everything. Anbei Ying began to miss Li Qing again. "Sakurako? Sakurako? What are you thinking about?" Matsushita Arita looked at his strange daughter. "Ah! Father, what did you say?" Matsushita Arita rolled his eyes. "I said you wait a little longer. When the time is right, you can divorce Anbei." Matsushita Arita doesn't even want to take Kenichi anymore, he is really tired of them now. "Yeah," Anbei Yingzi said softly. Anbei Yingzi stayed in the hospital for most of the day and returned home by herself in the evening. When she opened the door of the villa, she saw that the whole big house was empty, which made her feel a little empty, and she remembered the scene with Li Qing yesterday. "It would be great if we could be together every day." Anbei Yingzi clenched her fists. She decided that she must be with Li Qing after the divorce. Sitting on the sofa boredly, Anbei Yingzi watched the TV absent-mindedly and kept pressing the remote control in her hand. Clang! The door of the villa opened, and the drunk Kenichi Anbei fell in. Anbei Yingzi had no expression on her face and glanced at Anbei Kenichi, who fell on the ground, her eyes full of disgust. "Don't be afraid of not knowing the goods, be afraid of comparing goods. The guy on the ground is not a man at all. He is short and weak, and has no comparison with Li Qing's magic stick. Sakura, 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 help me up," Anbei Kenichi shouted in a daze. Anbei Yingzi thought about trying to get information from him, so she endured nausea and helped him to the sofa, closing the door at the same time. "Water, I want water," Anbei Kenichi said as usual. Anbei Yingzi sneered, poured him a cup of boiling water, and placed it on the table. Without noticing, Anbei Jian picked up the cup and poured it into his mouth. "Ouch, bastard, do you want to burn me to death?" "Kenichi, I'm sorry. I drank that cup myself, and this cup is yours." Anbei Yingzi pretended to be innocent and held the water glass in her hand. Humph. Kenichi Anbei, who was in a daze, took the water glass from her hand and took a sip. Then he loosened his tie at the collar and fell down on the sofa in a daze. Anbei Yingzi glanced at him and patted his face. "Hey, Kenichi wants to ask you a question." Kenichi Anbei opened his blurred eyes. "What's wrong? Tell me. Which is better for you, your first love, or me?" She was trying to make sure whether Anbei Kenichi was really drunk. "Tisk." Anbei Jian sneered and tried his best to stand up with his hands, pointing at Anbei Yingzi, and said, "How can you compare with her? She is the Baiyu Egwang in my heart, and you are the mortal world on the earth, which means that your family background is better." After getting drunk, he made no secret of his disgust for Anbei Yingzi. If Anbei Yingzi might have been heartbroken when she heard such words before, now she didn't feel any shock at all. He smiled and said to Kenichi Anbei, "Same. She was talking about the comparison between Anbei Kenichi and Li Cheng. The drunk Kenichi Anbei didn't hear anything and continued to brag about his white moonlight. Anbei Yingzi listened to him quietly. After he finished speaking, she suddenly asked, "Which is more important, your white moonlight or your treasury?" "He, the treasury. It's just as important, because I am the treasury, and the treasury is me," Anbei Kenichi said with a silly smile, pointing at himself. Anbei Yingzi frowned. She didn't understand this sentence. "What's the meaning?" He, without my eyes, no one can enter the door of the Bank of Japan's treasury, not even the president. Well. Kenichi Anbei burped and muttered. It turns out that in addition to the special key, the vault also has an iris recognition system. Without Kenichi Anbei's eye recognition, it cannot be opened even if there is a key. And it will also cause the warning system to sound an alarm. Hearing this, Anbei Yingzi smiled. The matter Li Qing told her was completed, and she could take the opportunity to meet Li Qing again. But it was too late now, and the man was still at home, so she decided to tell Li Qing tomorrow. Glancing at Kenichi Anbei, who was slumped on the sofa, Sakura sneered, wrapped herself in pajamas and walked slowly upstairs. What she didn't know was that Kenichi Anbei was woken up by the cold air in the middle of the night. After peeing, he suddenly remembered what Sakurako Anbei asked him in a daze. The more Kenichi Anbei thought about it, the more wrong he became. He endured his headache and walked directly into the study. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 563. Anbei Sakurako's behavior seemed a bit abnormal to Anbei Kenichi, who still vaguely remembered her question. A housewife who is out of touch with society must have some purpose in asking this kind of question. As the head of the Bank of Japan, Kenichi Anhoku is very concerned about all matters related to the Bank of Japan's treasury. Sitting on the chair in the study, Anbei Jian squinted for a while and felt that his headache was getting better. Then he took out the purple light lamp from the drawer and slowly walked to the safe. Turning the painting gently, the inner door opened, revealing the safe inside. Kenichi Anbei then sprinkled some powder on the number buttons, then turned off the light and turned on the purple light in his hand. Under the illumination of a purple light, some messy fingerprints appeared. When Ken Anbei saw this situation, his heart began to sink. He had wiped off his fingerprints with a cloth last time, so it was logical that there would be no fingerprints. He opened the safe with a gloomy face. There were more fingerprints inside the safe. At this time, he was sure that someone must have rummaged through the safe. After checking it carefully again, he let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that there was still something inside. But no one can guarantee whether the contents inside have been leaked. Turning the light back on, What is this? He found a small piece of cloth on the ground and frowned, holding it in his hand and looking at it. This is. Only then did Anbei Kenichi realize that these might be Anbei Sakurako's yoga pants, and then his face turned livid, as if he realized something. He stood up and walked downstairs. The garbage from the day before yesterday had not been thrown away. He instantly transformed into Conan, trying to find some clues in the garbage bags. Opening the black garbage bag, some pieces of fabric appeared in front of Anbei Jian's eyes, and there were some used tissues underneath. Kenichi Anbei could smell the smell of heather without getting closer to smell it. As a man, of course he knew what it was. The image of being raped by Anbei Yingzi flashed through his mind, and he could imagine the intensity of the battle. Matsushita Sakurako, Anbei Kenichi roared in a voice similar to that of a beast. He angrily walked to the bedroom and started to turn the doorknob, but this time it was not like usual. Anbei Yingzi actually locked the door. He was more certain of his guess. Damn it! opened the door and Beijian slammed the door hard. In her sleep, Anbei Sakurako was awakened by Anbei Kenichi's roar and found that the bedroom door kept shaking. Damn bitch, not only did you understand the contents of my safe, but you also humming cheated on me. Anbei Kenichi's words immediately frightened Anbei Yingzi and turned pale. There was obviously no surveillance in the study, so she didn't know why Anbei Kenii knew about it. Anbei Yingzi hurriedly picked up the mobile phone on the bedside table and started dialing Li Qing's number. At this time, Li Qing was in his sleep. He heard the ringtone of his cell phone in a daze and felt agitated. He took his arm out of Nanako's arms and picked up the phone. Huh? Sakurako. Hello? Sakurako. What's going on? It's so late and I don't know what happened to Anbei Yingzi. Qing, come and save me. Kenichi Anbei knows that I have touched the safe and is now smashing the door of my room. What should I do? Li Qing straightened up immediately upon hearing this, awakening Nanako from her sleep. Yingzi, you think of a way to escape through the window right now, I'll be there right away. Li Qing knew that the bedroom was on the second floor, which was not too high. As long as she could escape, she would be in no danger for the time being. After hanging up the phone, Li Qing started to put on his clothes, and his face looked a little ugly. Since Kenichi Anbei had been alerted, he had no choice but to act in advance. After saying hello to Nanako, Li Qing immediately called Zhang Dongzhou and asked him to arrange a manpower to go to the villa in Anbei. Nanako, who was fully awake, rolled her eyes. Sakurako? It's over, it looks like there will be one more. After speaking, he shook his head and continued to lie down and sleep. After Anbei Yingzi hung up the phone, she quickly ran to the window and looked down. She was still a little scared. The bedroom door kept vibrating, and Anbei Kenichi was yelling crazily outside due to his drunkenness. She had no choice but to pull out the sheets, fix them in place, and plan to slowly slide them down. Matsushita Sakurako, you shameless bitch. Duin kept banging on the door. Anbei Yingzi was so frightened that her face turned pale. Anbei Kenichi would really kill her. Slowly slide down the bed sheet, but after all, the bed sheet is not that long, and there is still about 3 meters away from the ground. Anbei Yingzi gritted her teeth and jumped directly. Ah! Anbei Yingzi cried out in pain. Unfortunately, she sprained her foot. But he immediately covered his mouth, not daring to make a sound. The villa area was dark in the middle of the night, with only some dim street lights on the road, which made her feel a little scared. Bang! The bedroom door was knocked open, and Kenichi Anbei, with red eyes, searched everywhere for traces of Sakurako Anbei. The wide open window and the sheets caught his attention, and he quickly walked to the window and looked down. Anbei Yingzi covered her mouth tightly at this time and hid under the eaves, not daring to make any sound. Matsushita Sakurako, you can't run away. If you dare to apologize to me, just wait for me. The stimulation of alcohol and cuckoldry made him a little passionate. Now he just wanted to catch Anbei Yingzi and torture her. Kenichi Anbei walked downstairs angrily and took the golf club. Anbei Yingzi downstairs breathed a sigh of relief. She knew she couldn't just sit there and wait for death. She had to hold on until Li Qing arrived. So the two began to play hide and seek, but the villa was so small that Anbei Yingzi was still discovered after more than 10 minutes. Knowing that she couldn't hide, Anbei Yingzi immediately limped towards the road. She knew that the man must be on his way. Anbei Jianyi looked at Anbei Yingzi a few hundred meters away with a wooden face. He had a sinister expression on his face and chased after Anbei Yingzi. A few hundred meters was not a short distance, but Anbei Yingzi didn't wear shoes and sprained her ankle. During the chase, the distance between the two gradually closed. Ring. The sound of the golf club rubbing against the ground was getting closer and closer. Anbei Yingzi turned her head and looked at Anbei Jianyi a dozen meters away, and she became more and more anxious. In her anxiety, Her feet were not smooth and she fell directly to the ground. Looking at Anbei Jianyi getting closer and closer, Anbei Yingzi showed a desperate expression on her face. Run? I'll see where you're going. Anbei Jianyi walked closer with a golf club in hand, grinning. I didn't expect that the daughter of the Matsushita family would cheat on her husband. Even if I beat you to death this time, your father wouldn't dare to say anything. Anbei Jianyi didn't like Anbei Sakurako in the first place. This time, Anbei Sakurako cheated on her husband, which undoubtedly gave him a reason to divorce. Even if he broke Anbei Sakurako's legs now, the Anbei family would not only have to endure it, but also compensate him. And he could use this opportunity to gain the sympathy of the public and add another chip to his election as prime minister. It really kills two birds with one stone. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 564. Looking at the embarrassed Anbei Yingzi lying on the ground, Anbei Jianyi chuckled. After chasing all the way, he figured it out in his heart. But the shame of being cuckolded made him want to beat up the woman in front of him. Tell me, who is your adulterer? If you dare to touch my safe, I will kill him. Anbei Jianyi's eyes were fierce, and he slowly raised the golf club in his hand. Although Anbei Yingzi was afraid, she still gritted her teeth and didn't say a word. Don't say it. Okay, I will break your legs, strip you naked, and send you back to the Matsushita family. I believe your father will lose face this time. Anbei Jianyi stroked the golf club in his hand. He just wanted to humiliate Anbei Yingzi and the Anbei family in this way. Incompetent man, don't dream of getting any information from me. Abe Yingzi knew that she might not escape the fate of being beaten, and she completely let go of the fear in her heart. He will avenge me. Revenge? Haha, I haven't seen anyone who dares to avenge me in my whole life. Go to hell, bitch. I will find your adulterer and mince him into minced meat. Anbei Jianyi raised the golf club in his hand. But the convoy that suddenly appeared in the distance with high beams on made it difficult for him to open his eyes. Bang bang. The sound of continuous door closings rang out. Li Qing got out of the car, slowly stepped forward to help Anbei Yingzi, whose pajamas were covered with mud and looked embarrassed, and hugged her in his arms. Anbei Yingzi looked at Li Qing's handsome face and couldn't help crying, Qing, you are finally here. Be good. Don't be afraid. Li Qing patted her back and comforted her. When Anbei Jianyi got used to the strong light, he took a closer look and saw a group of thugs in black suits on the opposite side, looking at him coldly. Haha, black society. Just now he was a little panicked, but now that he saw that the opposite side was a violent organization, he felt relieved and loosened his collar. With his status, he can easily kill any gangster organization no matter how powerful they are. Anbei Yingzi, you are really going backwards. I thought you would at least find someone of equal status to me, but you found such a bastard. Anbei Jianyi looked at Li Qing with disdain. Li Qing raised his eyebrows when he heard this. It has been a long time since anyone talked to him so arrogantly. Who was it last time? Oh, it seems to be Lei Fuhong, and now the grass on his grave is very tall. He is stronger than you, 10,000 times, Anbei Yingzi said angrily. Li Qing smiled and patted Anbei Yingzi's hips as a reward. Thank you for the compliment, 10,000 minutes is still a bit exaggerated. Anbei Yingzi felt Li Qing's warm big hand, hummed, and felt weak all over. Her breathing became rapid, and her face was stained with a trace of blush. Anbei Yingzi's words and her charm really pissed off Anbei Jianyi. Asshole, shameless adulterer. Tisk tisk, when you were having sex with your subordinate's wife, it seemed like you were doing it in front of your subordinate. Not only are you shameless, you're also perverted. Li Qing retorted without any hesitation. In terms of perversion, Li Qing admitted that he was not as good as Xiao Di, who had no moral bottom line. Anbei Jianyi's face turned pale and black. Asshole, You, you investigated me. Li Qing looked at Anbei Jianyi with contempt. You have less than a minute, do you need me to investigate? It's me, 3 times as much as you, damn Xiao Di, Cunner is not good at playing around. Crow stared at Anbei Jianyi with some jealousy from behind. Thinking that Crow had seen all kinds of beauties, he had never tried committing a crime before his husband. Through the information, he knew that this Anbei Jianyi was comparable to him in terms of props. Who the hell are you? Anbei Jianyi was already cuckolded, and now his face turned green with anger from Crow's words. Me, Crow smiled and pointed at himself, walked in front of Anbei Jianyi. I'm your father. He punched Anbei Jianyi in the eye. Poor Anbei Jianyi was originally pampered. He had just consumed some physical strength chasing Anbei Yingzi. Now he was knocked to the ground by Crow before he could even catch his breath. Crow was so excited that he picked up the golf club on the ground and smashed it hard on Anbei Jianyi's leg. With a click, Anbei Jianyi's leg bent into a weird shape, and it was obvious that his leg was broken. Anbei Jianyi's scream was heard far away. Li Qing frowned and looked at the surrounding villas. Some villas had lights on. Crow, take it to the villa. After saying that, he planned to hug Anbei Yingzi and walk towards the villa. Ouch! Anbei Yingzi's foot injury made her cry out in pain. Li Qing then realized that Yingzi was barefoot. Not only did she sprain her ankle, but her soles were also rubbed bloody by the asphalt road. He smiled and shook his head, picked up Anbei Yingzi's leg and carried her up. Anbei Yingzi put her face against Li Qing's chest and felt the strong heartbeat. She immediately felt that everything she had done was worth it. Let's go back to the villa. We'll have fun tonight. Li Qing sneered at Anbei Jianyi, who was holding his legs and wailing, and took the lead to hold Anbei Yingzi and walk towards the villa. Zhang Dongxiu didn't indulge Anbei Jianyi, and directly grabbed Anbei Jianyi's injured leg and dragged him to the villa. Soon, Anbei Jianyi, who was shirtless, was rubbed bloody by the rough ground, and a long blood stain extended to the door of his villa. In the villa, Li Qing looked at the bloody feet that had made him linger the day before yesterday, and felt a little distressed. How does it hurt? With you here, I won't feel any pain. Anbei Yingzi felt that she was the happiest woman in the world. Oh, bear with it. Li Qing took the medical alcohol from the younger brother with a sly smile, and poured it on her feet in Anbei Yingzi's surprised eyes. Anbei Yingzi couldn't bear the pain and bit Li Qing's arm. But she didn't expect Li Qing's muscles to be like steel, and almost knocked her teeth out. Hate! Anbei Yingzi hit Li Qing with her hand and rubbed her cheeks. You bitch! Anbei Jianyi was almost angry to death when he saw the two flirting, and he endured the pain and cursed directly. Li Qing smiled and looked at him. Not bad, you are still energetic. If you can still curse later, I will let you take his last name. Li Qing pointed at the crow. Brother, I don't want him to have my last name. I don't have such a son. How about letting him have Dongxiu's last name? Crow curled his lips and protested in a low voice. You are talking nonsense. My last name comes from Zhang family in Ludong, China. Please don't insult my ancestors. Zhang Dongxiu pushed Crow unceremoniously. Bullshit, you are a Chinese, how dare you blindly recognize your ancestors? I don't accept it. Crow began to jump. Li Qing touched his forehead helplessly. The two began to argue again because of the last name. Take him to the study. I want to interrogate him. The two glared at each other and asked the younger brother to drag the crying Anbei Jianyi to the study. Li Qing sat in the boss chair in the study with Anbei Yingzi sitting in his arms, and deliberately said, Hey, Anbei Jianyi, I fought with Yingzi hundreds of rounds here in the past few days. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 565. Anbei Jianyi's eyes were red, and he felt that the pain of his broken leg could not suppress the anger in his heart. Asshole, who are you? You dare not admit it, Anbei Jianyi roared like a beast. Li Qing hugged Anbei Yingzi, smelled her hair, looked at Anbei Jianyi who was like a lost dog and smiled, me? Haha, my name is Li Qing. The younger brothers beside him looked at Anbei Jianyi with a smile, especially wanting to know how he felt now. Anbei Jianyi was stunned at first, and then his eyes showed resentment. You are Li Qing? Li Qing in the New World. The moment he heard this name, Anbei Jianyi's heart began to sink. He knew that the Two-Leaf Society action team had been destroyed. He even advocated taking assassination-based actions against Li Qing, but was rejected by his father. If they really killed Li Qing in Zaire, not to mention that the father of the United States disagreed, they were not sure to survive the endless revenge in the New World. Moreover, the threat of the army and the lessons of the local dogs' naval battle were still vivid in their minds. If the Java Chinese Autonomous Province is really crazy, Tokyo is very likely to become the next gathering place for acquaintances. Anbei Jianyi is worthy of being the epitome of shamelessness, and a smile appeared on his face instantly. So it was Mr. Li Qing, Sakurako. If you had said it earlier, there would not be such a dispute. If I had known that you and Sakurako were in love, I would have divorced immediately. Anbei Jianyi suppressed the desire to cut Li Qing into pieces in his heart, and he had to do this to save his life. Li Qing never cared who the other party was when he killed people. Anbei Jianyi's words not only surprised Li Qing, but also surprised his younger brothers. You know, Anbei Jianyi is a person who lives a small life, but he is so shameless to save his life. Haha, interesting, Li Qing smiled with a smile. Is your shamelessness inherited? Anbei Jianyi's eyes flashed with anger when he heard the words, but he still had a smile on his face. Mr. Li Qing, we can actually win together. Although you ruined our plan, I believe you did it unintentionally. You have your own territory now, and you can build your own country. I believe that our Zairizhi will support you internationally, and we can also provide a lot of assistance. Anbei Jianyi believes that as long as the benefits are big enough, he can turn anyone against him. His grandfather told him before his death that in the past, there were traitors who were turned against them all over China, and even a Japanese soldier with hundreds of traitors could occupy a city. Not to mention others, even he himself has a price. As long as he can become prime minister, he can even sell out his own father. Li Qing looked at Anbei Jianyi with a serious face and sneered, sorry, I really did it on purpose. Besides, do I need Zairizhi's support? If he wants to build a country, not to mention other countries, even the Eagle Sauce and his hometown will support him with both hands, so why does he need the support of a small foot basin chicken? Now, don't say I don't give you a chance. Tell me how to enter the door of the Bank of Japan's vault. Li Qing pointed at Anbei Jianyi who was sitting on the ground. Anbei Jianyi looked at Li Qing in shock when he heard Li Qing's question, what do you want to do? You are crazy. Rob a bank, can't you see, Li Qing said with a smile. Anbei Jianyi swallowed his saliva. He thought Li Qing must be crazy. As a state-owned Bank of Japan, is it so easy to rob? But Anbei Jianyi's eyes turned and a plan came to his mind. If Li Qing really robbed the Bank of Japan, he would be courting death. Don't tell. Tell. I'll tell you everything. The Bank of Japan has 3 lines of defense. The first one. Anbei Jianyi didn't hide it and said it directly, but it was basically 9 true and 1 false. He lied on the last line of defense. The last line of defense requires not only a key but also my own dynamic iris authentication. Li Qing raised his eyebrows when he heard the news. At this time, Anbei Yingzi, who had been sitting in Li Qing's arms, secretly muttered in his ear, iris verification is not dynamic, he is lying to you. Dynamic and static, the difference is huge. Dynamic iris authentication must be done by a living person. Static dead people's eyes can also be used. Kenichi Anbei said this just to save his life. Li Qing glanced at Kenichi Anbei and nodded slightly to Yingzi. He didn't want this person to live at all. After all, he let Kenichi Anbei know too much today. Kenichi Anbei felt that things were bad when he saw Yingzi Anbei whispering in Li Qing's ear. How much money is there in the vault? Although Li Qing is not short of money, who would dislike having too much money? After all, it is a matter of stealing, and it would be a waste if you don't take it. Kenichi Anbei pursed his lips tightly. What he just said can be investigated, but how much money is in the vault, only a few people know. Li Qing looked at Kenichi Anbei, who was silent, and waved at the crow. Kill it, it's useless. I said. There is not much cash in the vault, only tens of billions of yen, a few $100 million. Li Qing was stunned when he heard this. Such a large vault is just this little? That's too little. Are you lying to me? Li Qing frowned. Anbei Jianyi looked at Wu Ya holding a knife and slowly walked towards him. He waved his hands in fear. No, it's really not. It's because most of the vault is made up of gold bars, and most of the Japanese yen and US dollars are scattered in the branches. Gold bars? Li Qing was stunned for a moment, and then realized that the vault was full of gold bars. Why did you get so many gold bars? If the vault is really mostly gold bars, then the value is inestimable. Anbei Jianyi showed a tangled look on his face. Obviously this matter is confidential. What? You still want to hide it? These are all the aid we gave to East T. Anbei Jianyi has given up resistance. Anyway, he has to say it, and he doesn't want to suffer. You are going to do something big. Li Qing's face was a little ugly. You know, East T has always been a scabby disease in his hometown. Anbei Jianyi took a careful look. The plan to change the country failed. We have to think of another way to stop the rise of China. This is the latest plan of Yataguchi, which has been approved by all the senior officials. Li Qing's eyes showed a trace of murderous intent. Everyone knows that there will be a war between China and Xiaorizai sooner or later, and now Xiaorizai has begun to act secretly. I didn't expect there would be an unexpected gain, Li Qing sneered. He has decided to take all these gold bars away and can't let Xiaorizai's plan go through. Dig out his eyes. Li Qing looked at Anbei Jianyi and said indifferently. No, let me go. You can't get into the vault without me. Anbei Jianyi kept moving his broken legs. But where can he run? A scream sounded, and after a while Crow smiled and put the 2 eyeballs into the special potion brought by his younger brother. Li Qing grinned and looked at Anbei Jianyi, who was lying on the ground and covering his eyes. You get out. To deal with perverts, you have to use perverted methods. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 566. The storm in the study room stopped after a long time. Li Qing and Anbei Yingzi put on their clothes again. Not far away was Anbei Kenichi, who had fainted. Qing, what should we do now? Anbei Yingzi looked at Anbei Kenichi worriedly. If people knew about this matter would really be exposed. Li Qing narrowed his eyes and thought for a while. Yingzi, go to your father's house. You must convince your father to let him announce to the public that you have been living in your mother's house during this period to take care of him conveniently. As for this, don't worry about it, I will solve it. Before coming, Li Qing had people destroy all the surveillance in this area. At least the police station can't find any evidence. As for turning this place into a fire scene, it was burned to ashes, and nothing could be investigated. Anbei Yingzi thought about it, and there was only this way. At least she had an alibi witness and cleared her suspicion. Crow, Li Qing shouted to the outside. Brother, Crow knocked on the door and walked in immediately. Give him a quick death, Li Qing looked at Anbei Jianyi and nodded. Now he didn't want to dig out more information from him. By the way, take away everything in his safe. Li Qing pointed to the already opened safe. Li Qing walked out with Anbei Yingzi in his arms. After solving the villa issue, he had to explain the action. He wanted to use Anbei Jianyi's death to attract some attention and start the plan to rob the vault. After a short scream, Anbei Jianyi, who had been clamoring to avenge his adulterer an hour ago, was no longer heard. Then there was a deliberately designed gas explosion, and the whole villa was engulfed in flames. When the fire truck came, the villa had become a ruin. Matsushita Arita has been discharged from the hospital and returned home. As he is old, he sleeps lightly, so the bodyguards and servants he hired usually sleep in the apartment outside the villa. The sudden sound of the door opening downstairs woke him up. "Who's here?" he muttered softly. The sons usually wouldn't disturb him so late unless there was something urgent. Putting on a coat, Matsushita Arita put on glasses and walked downstairs slowly. "Sakurako? You, what's wrong?" Seeing Anbei Sakurako in a mess and limping, Matsushita Arita asked in surprise. "Father." Seeing her father, Anbei Sakurako couldn't hold back her grievance anymore and cried into her father's arms. Matsushita Arita gently patted his daughter's back and asked distressedly, "What's wrong? What happened?" It took a while to calm Anbei Sakurako down. "Father, Anbei Kenichi wants to kill me." Sakurako's words shocked Matsushita Arita, and then he was furious. He had always felt guilty towards Sakurako, who had been wronged in the Abe family because she had no offspring. Now Anbei Kenichi dared to kill his own daughter, which was simply unbearable for the uncle and the aunt. "Bastard, I want him to pay the price." "Where is he?" Matsushita picked up the phone and was about to call someone. Sakurako Matsushita hurriedly stopped him. "Father, he is dead. Tonight." Sakurako Matsushita told the whole story from beginning to end. Of course, she hid the absurd details with Li Qing. Li Qing did not want Sakurako to hide herself, and asked her to tell the truth directly. Matsushita Arita was not a fool, and telling the truth was the wisest thing. Matsushita Arita was stunned by this bizarre incident, but what shocked him most was the death of Anbei Kenichi. If the old man of the Anbei family knew that his son was dead, especially because of his daughter, he would madly retaliate against the Matsushita family. Matsushita Arita's experience over the years made him calm down quickly. "Well, yes. That person is right, you have been living with me during this period, and I will tell the people below." Matsushita Sakurako never revealed Li Qing's identity, and now is not the right time. Li Qing meant that he would meet Matsushita Arita after the matter calmed down. Seeing that his daughter refused to talk about the mysterious man, Matsushita Arita had to sigh. After all, she was his daughter, what could he do to her? At this time, Li Qing was not idle either. He arranged for his younger brother to visit all the villas where the lights were on. Of course, he did not kill anyone this time. He just threatened the relatives of these people to ensure that they would not talk nonsense. It was not until dawn that Li Qing returned to his manor. He was a little sleepy and wanted to take a nap. He had been busy all night and had consumed a lot of energy with Yingzi. The Iron Man also needed to rest. He walked directly into Gangshen's bedroom and hugged Gangsheng to make him feel at ease. As soon as he entered the door, he heard bursts of vomiting coming from the bathroom. Li Qing hurried to the bathroom and saw Gangsheng squatting by the toilet and retching constantly, with a painful expression on his face. He hurriedly patted Gangsheng on the back and asked with concern, "What's wrong? Did you eat something wrong?" After all, it was a small life. Gangsheng had eaten a lot of raw food during this period. Li Qing suspected that he had eaten sashimi. It took a while for Gangsheng to stop, panting and saying, "I don't know, I've been wanting to vomit since the day before yesterday, and I haven't been able to eat anything these past 2 days." Li Qing frowned and touched Gangsheng's forehead. Have you seen a doctor? No, I plan to see a doctor today. Well, I'll accompany you later. Before Li Qing finished speaking, he suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be pregnancy? Gang Shen was stunned for a moment. She hadn't gotten pregnant for such a long time, and she hadn't even thought about it. Ah! Is it possible? After all, it's been so long. Although she said so, Gang Shen's face showed joy. What if she really got pregnant? Let's go. Let's go to the hospital. Li Qing's face was wrinkled with laughter. What if she got pregnant? It would be really great. He wondered if he had accumulated enough merit. Gang Shen glared at him coquettishly. Doctor, you haven't started work yet. Li Qing smiled happily and said, don't worry, money is omnipotent. This matter was too easy for him. He immediately asked Zhang Dongzhou to contact the best obstetrics and gynecology hospital, and Li Qing hurried over with Gang Shen. Congratulations, Mr. Li, Mrs. Li. It can be confirmed that you are 3.5 months pregnant. The doctor was smiling all the time, without any complaints about being pulled out of bed. This forced overtime made him earn a year's salary. Good, good. I'm finally going to be a father, Li Qing was ecstatic. After so many years in this world, he finally had his own offspring. The most important thing was that the first offspring was born in Hong Kong, which made him even happier. Ahem, let me tell you secretly, it's very likely to be a boy, the doctor said as if to take credit. In fact, it's not possible, it's certain. But he didn't want to say too much. Crow, reward. Crow also happily took out a handful of US dollars and stuffed it into the doctor's hand. The eldest brother has a son, and the happiest ones are them, the younger brothers. As long as there are successors, the New World Group will continue for 50 or 100 years. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 567. After a safety check on the fetus and confirming that his son was healthy, Li Qingke happily took Hong Kong Sheng back to the manor. But he has decided that after his little life is over, he will immediately return to Hong Kong to accompany Hong Kong students in preparing for the birth. He can't let Hong Kong students get hurt at all. After all, the environment in Hong Kong is much safer than here in his childhood. Be careful, Li Qing carefully helped Hong Kong students cross the steps. Oh, it's only 3.5 months. It's fine. Don't be so cautious, Hong Kong said with a smile. That won't work. The first and third trimesters are the most prone to accidents. Li Qing shook his head. He was very concerned about his first child. It has been decided to arrange some female bodyguards around Hong Kong students to ensure the safety of Hong Kong students. What are you doing? Nanako was busy in the kitchen making breakfast. Li Qing took Sister Hong Kong out as soon as he came back from a half-night stay, looking mysterious and mysterious. Haha, good thing, Li Qing laughed. Nanako saw that Li Qing had been protecting Sister Hong Kong and asked strangely, what good thing? Your Hong Kong student sister has a baby, Li Qing said with a smile. Nanako was delighted when she heard this, with a smile on her face. Really? That's great. But then I felt a huge sense of loss in my heart. I couldn't help but touch my belly. My belly was so disappointing. Obviously, Li Qing is more obsessed with him during this period. Well, let's keep up the good work. After helping Hong Kong Sheng to the sofa, Li Qing also sat down and thought for a moment. Hong Kong student, you clean up today and I'll have someone take you back to Hong Kong. Li Qing thought for a while and thought that he still couldn't take any risks. Only Xiangjiang and the Java Chinese Autonomous Province were the safest now. But Li Qing was not very reassured about the medical conditions in the Autonomous Province. No need. She had only been here for a short time, mainly because she didn't want to leave Li Qing's side. She might not be able to see her man until the child was born. Yes. I'll feel more at ease when you return to Xiangjiang. Li Qing could tell what Hong Kong Sheng was thinking at a glance, and stepped forward to touch her hair and comfort her in a low voice. Hong Kong Sheng looked at him seriously and nodded. She was not the kind of ignorant woman, and she understood Li Qing's thoughts very well. When we get to Xiangjiang, I will ask Shui to follow you every step of the way. Li Qing smiled and said softly. Nothing is as important as my son now? Well, don't worry, I will take care of myself. Hong Kong Sheng reluctantly rested his head on Li Qing's shoulder. In fact, I plan to go to Europe for vacation with my man this time. Unexpectedly, something happened and she suddenly became pregnant again. Covering her belly with both hands, Hong Kong Sheng smiled happily. Thinking of having her and Li Qing's baby in her belly, she felt a sense of satisfaction in her heart. Tokyo Airport, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Li Qing watched his private plane slowly climb, and then he felt relieved. Brother Qing, Sister Hong Kong is so happy. Nanako glanced at the flying plane with envy. Okay, this time is all yours. Li Qing glanced at Nanako in a funny way, knowing what she meant behind her words, no balloons. Nanako jumped up happily. She wanted to make full use of this time. After all, she was not young anymore and wanted to have her and Li Qing's baby. Her father always said he wanted to have a grandson every time they met. Brother Qing, I want it too. Lily looked at Li Qing aggrievedly. During this period, she had no time during the day. Instead, Nanako accompanied Sister Hong Kong to go shopping and do beauty treatments every day. She felt that Nanako's status in Li Qing's mind was much higher than hers. Okay, okay. Li Qing's request for his descendants is naturally that more children will bring happiness. Only with more descendants can the entire family prosper. Mr. Enbei, my condolences. We have tried our best, the Tokyo fire chief said carefully while standing in front of former Prime Minister Enbei. They had indeed tried their best on this matter. When they arrived, the entire villa was burned to a skeleton. He suspected that it was definitely not as simple as an ordinary fire. As a professional, he understands that ordinary fires cannot burn so fast. But he didn't express his suspicions. It's better to do more than to do less. After all, he is a former prime minister. Old Enbei held back his grief and nodded. Has Kenichi's body been found? The fire chief nodded. They had indeed found the carbonized body of Kenichi Enbei. Take me. The fire chief hesitated. This scene would be too much of a shock to the loved ones. Let's go, take me there. In all these years, I haven't seen any big storms, Old Enbei emphasized his tone. The fire chief sighed and walked towards the ruins first, until in a corner, a carbonized body was placed there. The moment he saw the corpse, Old Enbei still couldn't control his emotions, and his lips trembled involuntarily due to excitement. Go ahead and let me stay with him for a while. Old Enbei waved his hand. The fire chief said nothing and turned to leave. At this moment, there was only a trace of tears on Old Enbei's face. This was his favorite son and most important heir. How could he not feel pain? The man who was alive and kicking yesterday was now a charred corpse. How could he not be angry? After standing for a long time, Lao Enbei turned around and straightened his clothes. Walk back to your car. What is the specific cause of the fire? Old Enbei stared at the fire chief and asked. Mr. Enbei, the fire started in the kitchen first, it should be a gas explosion. The fire chief looked at the detailed appraisal report. Gas explosion. Old Enbei frowned and repeated. As far as he knew, his son never cooked. How could it cause a gas explosion? Is Enbei Yingzi not here yet? Old Enbei turned and asked his housekeeper. Madam is on the way. The housekeeper said respectfully. Old Enbei shook his head. He still felt that the fire was too abrupt. This is a luxurious villa. The fire protection system inside is running. How could there be no reaction at all? Kenichi, Kenichi. A shrill female voice came from a distance. I saw Anbei Yingzi stumbling over with the support of Matsushita Arita. Father, what happened to Kenichi? Anbei Yingzi's face was full of tears, and there were some scratches on her forehead, as if she had just fallen. Old Anbei felt very uncomfortable when he saw Anbei Yingzi's appearance. Yingzi, Kenichi, is dead. Anbei Yingzi opened her eyes wide, as if she couldn't believe it, and she fainted with her legs kicked. Matsushita Arita quickly supported her and kept calling the doctor. In fact, he now admired his daughter's acting skills very much. This kind of acting skills can win an Oscar in a few minutes. The doctor and the nurse came immediately and carried the fainted Anbei Yingzi into the ambulance. After confirming that Anbei Yingzi was fine, old Anbei and Matsushita Arita breathed a sigh of relief. Mr. Anbei, I'm really sorry. It was because I was hospitalized during this period that Yingzi went to her mother's house to take care of me. If she stayed at home, she might. Matsushita Arita kept bowing and apologizing. Old Anbei sighed. He also knew that Matsushita had been hospitalized some time ago. At this time, he had completely dispelled his doubts about Anbei Yingzi. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 568. Alas, you don't have to blame yourself too much for this matter. It's not your fault. Old Anbei patted Matsushita Arita on the shoulder. His son is dead, and there is no point in blaming Matsushita Arita now. It's better to let Matsushita keep this guilt in his heart, so that he won't be embarrassed to refuse when he finds him later. He guessed wrong about this. Matsushita Arita was full of joy at this time. Damn, Anbei Kenichi kept coveting his own Matsushita group, and his mother abused his own daughter. He died too cheaply. I will order the Tokyo Police Department to investigate this matter, old Anbei said softly. Matsushita Arita frowned when he heard this. What? What did you find? In fact, Matsushita Arita was also a little worried that old Anbei would find something. After all, this matter involved his daughter. If he really found something, he couldn't escape the responsibility. Not yet, I just think this matter is a bit strange. Old Anbei shook his head gently. He was a little suspicious of the other two big crows of Yatta Crow. After all, his son died, and the heirs of the other big crows benefited the most. Whoever benefits the most is the most suspicious. Matsushita Arita was relieved when he heard this. It was good that there was no one. It would be strange if the police station could find out. During this period, I will trouble Sakurako to help with Kenichi's funeral. Old Anbei turned his head and looked at the body of Anbei Kenichi covered with a white cloth and carried to the funeral car. In fact, Anbei Sakurako didn't need to come to most things, but she had to attend as a widow. This is natural, alas. Please accept my condolences. Matsushita Arita pretended to be sad. Old Anbei nodded and walked slowly towards his car. Matsushita Arita saw that old Anbei was a little hunched, and he didn't have any sympathy for him in his heart. Old Anbei was not a good person. Thinking about how many things he had done to destroy his family, it was retribution for him to lose his son in his old age. Zaireizi's funeral also originated from China, and the funeral was generally held within 4 days. Due to Anbei Jianyi's identity, the old Anbei arranged 4 days. The funeral is divided into 3 steps. The first step is to keep vigil. During the vigil, the body will be placed in the funeral home and family and friends will gather here to express condolences to the deceased. The second step is cremation. There is nothing much to say about this step, but the old Anbei couldn't bear to have his son burned twice, so he gave up. The third step is the memorial service, which usually involves prayer, sacrifices and recitation of scriptures. Family and friends give speeches or share stories of the deceased. The weather in Zaire can change at any time. There are typhoons from time to time during the season. This typhoon is even more weird. It was originally heading for China, but it turned 90 degrees halfway and came to Zaire. Hua. On the first night of the vigil, it was raining outside, and everyone in the morning hall except Anbei Yingzi and her mother-in-law left. Anbei Yingzi, with swollen eyes, stood tiredly in front of the morning hall in a black kimono. Yingzi, no one will come in this weather, go sit over there for a while. We have to continue the vigil later. Anbei Jianyi's mother said. No one has come for more than an hour, and it seems that no one will come tonight. Mom, go home and rest. I'm here, Anbei Yingzi said to her tired mother-in-law. Anbei Jianyi's mother is already in her 70s, and she is indeed a little exhausted due to sadness and busyness. Okay, I'll go back first. I'll leave it to you here. Anbei Yingzi hurriedly bowed and sent her mother-in-law away. Anbei Yingzi straightened up and pounded her sore waist. She was really tired after standing for a day. Glancing at Anbei Jianyi's portrait, you were not good to me when you were alive, and now I have done you justice. She was not sad at all about Anbei Jianyi's death. When Anbei Jianyi picked up the golf club and wanted to break her leg, she wished he was dead. She couldn't imagine what would happen to her if Li Qing hadn't arrived that day. I actually have to keep vigil for him, it's too cheap for him. When she thought of her man, Anbei Yingzi couldn't help but feel a little itchy, and said directly to Anbei Kenichi's portrait, "Humph, that man is not comparable to you." "Which man?" the sudden voice sounded, and Anbei Yingzi almost scared her to death. She quickly turned her head to look at the place where the voice came from, and was immediately surprised and said, "Why are you here?" Li Qing was standing not far from her, looking at her with a smile. "Alas, I passed by and came to see you by the way." Li Qing walked up and looked carefully at Anbei Yingzi, who was wearing a black kimono. Not to mention, Yingzi looked particularly moving in this black kimono, with a bit of sadness on her face, which made people feel more lovable. Coupled with the morning hall, candles, and portraits behind, this is a true restoration of a daily life action movie. The main reason is that Yingzi has a lot of buffs on her body, such as widow, wife, queen, rich girl. Looking at Li Qing's slightly aggressive eyes, Anbei Yingzi blushed and spat lightly. "Nonsense, it's raining so hard, how could it be possible to pass by? Tisk tisk, we know each other, it's not too much to burn incense." Li Qing looked at Anbei Kenichi's portrait with a playful look and teased. "Hate it, aren't you afraid that he will get up?" Matsushita Yingzi stepped forward and patted Li Qing, telling him not to talk nonsense here. Li Qing smiled nonchalantly, even if he gets up, do you think I will be afraid of him? If there really are evil spirits in this world, Li Qing is not afraid. With the murderous aura and the tiger tattoo on his body, the evil spirits might be scared away by his breath. Li Qing directly hugged Anbei Yingzi's waist, lifted her legs, and walked to the lounge next to him. "Ah, what are you doing?" Anbei Yingzi blushed and exclaimed. No, you're crazy. There may be people from the Anbei family nearby." Although Anbei Yingzi also felt very excited, she was a little worried about being discovered by the Anbei family. "Don't worry, there are my people guarding outside, not even a fly can get in. In such a heavy rain, only those dogs have the heart to let you, a weak woman, stay here." Li Qing's big hand kept climbing up through the lapel, and Anbei Yingzi was relieved and cooperated with Li Qing. The wind and rain outside were swaying, and Anbei Yingzi was also shaking inside the house. This kind of curious excitement made her turn over and take charge, even crazier than Li Qing. More than an hour later, the wind and rain outside had not stopped, but the wind and rain inside the house had just stopped. Anbei Yingzi was sweating profusely and lying in Li Qing's arms. "I can't do it anymore, Qing. Why are you so strong today?" Li Qing smiled and grabbed her. "It's not me who is strong, it's you who is strong." He was in high spirits because he knew he had a son. No matter what, he had to sow more seeds and sprout more. Li Qing also told her about having a son. When Anbei Yingzi heard that Li Qing's other women had sons, she immediately quit. No, I want to be pregnant too. Without waiting for Li Qing to react, she jumped on the horse directly. It seemed that the typhoon tonight would not stop. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 569. Li Qing put on his clothes and straightened his wrinkled collar. He saw Yingzi still savoring the aftertaste. I'm leaving. I have some business to do. Anbei Yingzi began to stand up and straighten the mess on her body. Now she was full of energy. She glared at Li Qing in a reproachful way. Business? You have business to do here. Li Qing chuckled and stroked Anbei Yingzi's cheek. Of course. He wanted to take advantage of Anbei Kenichi's funeral in the next few days to rob the Japanese silver. While the person in charge has not been changed, otherwise Anbei Kenichi's eyes will be useless after the change of the person in charge. However, he did not tell the woman these things. For Yingzi, the less she knew, the safer she was. But Yingzi was not a fool. She could vaguely guess what Li Qing was going to do. She stepped forward and hugged Li Qing worriedly. Be careful. She herself did not expect that this damn fleeting love affair would actually enter her heart. Li Qing patted her back gently. Don't worry, it's okay. After you finish here, go to your father. Don't say anything and don't care about anything. What he did would definitely cause a sensation in the whole Zirizi. The Zirizi government would definitely investigate strictly. As the wife of Kenichi Anbei, Sakurako would definitely be questioned. After listening to Li Qing's words, Sakurako Anbei nodded solemnly. Li Qing smiled and kissed her forehead, and walked out into the wind and rain. Sakurako Anbei looked at Li Qing, who was gradually entering the rain, and sighed lightly. She wanted to stay with this man forever. But she knew that this was impossible, and she couldn't control it. Li Qing had already got in the car and drove towards his manor. Kenichi Anbei's funeral will last for 4 days. Today is the first day. He plans to start implementing the plan in the afternoon of the 4th day. The afternoon of the 4th day is a memorial service. Kenichi Anbei's friends, especially the senior executives of the Bank of Japan, will definitely be present. He and others can take this opportunity to take over the Bank of Japan vault. Of course, taking down the Bank of Japan is not just a matter of words. He has already made detailed arrangements for this plan. The number of people participating in this operation has reached more than 200, and there are more than 50 vehicles of various types. If this is successful, it will be an unprecedented bank robbery in the world. For this operation, the Aoki Group is making various preparations intensively, just like a clockwork machine. On the 4th day of Kenichi Anbei's funeral, the sky was still gloomy as usual, but the wind and rain were much smaller, and the drizzle splashed on the umbrellas of pedestrians. Because it was close to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there were not many people in the Bank of Japan. Banks usually close at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. About 10 business cars parked at the door of the Bank of Japan, and several teams of people got off the cars, pushed open the door and walked in. Sir, we are closing the door, what business do you have? The security guard did not react, and when he saw the dress of the person coming, it was too late to draw his gun. These people were wearing black individual combat equipment, holding automatic rifles with silencers in their hands, and wearing Ultraman masks on their faces. Do you believe in light? I. Puff. With a slight sound, the security guard's head was instantly pierced by a bullet and fell straight to the ground. It seems that you don't believe. The customers who saw the scene began to scream. Crow made a silent gesture to them, and everyone in the entire bank hall was so scared that they kept silent, and they didn't even dare to breathe too loudly, for fear of attracting the attention of these gangsters. Crow took the tear gas bomb and threw it directly into the counter through the window, and the whole counter was filled with the smell of tear gas. The bank tellers coughed violently and had to open the door and climb out quickly. After all, the money belongs to the country, and life belongs to oneself. Ciro, cut off the power, Crow said with a walkie-talkie. The power supply of the entire Bank of Japan was cut off instantly, and only some green emergency indicator lights were on. Without Crow's instructions, the younger brothers stepped forward and tied up the people lying on the ground to prevent them from making trouble. Jammers had been set up in advance around them, and no mobile phone communication signals could be sent out. The radio frequency band is different from that of mobile phones, so it can be used, and Crow and others were not worried that the news would spread. Footsteps sounded in the stairwell, and Crow knew that the security forces on the opposite side were taking action. The elevator had no power, so the group had to run downstairs. Crow gestured to the younger brothers behind him, and the younger brothers took out the grenades from their waists, pulled out the pull rings and threw them directly into the stairwell. The small space allowed the power of the grenades to be perfectly exerted. Multiple grenades exploded in the stairwell, and the steel balls inside scattered everywhere. Most of the security personnel in the stairwell were hit, pierced by the steel balls, and fell in a pool of blood. Then the younger brothers rushed in and shot again, and only the dead people had no ability to move. One team guards the staircase. The special team follows me, and the other teams move toward the vault. Anyone who resists will be killed. In order to ensure that the news is not leaked, Crow ordered that no one who does not cooperate will be left alive. Yes, a group of Ultramen responded. Crow led the special team to the control center. Although there was no electricity, the control center had an emergency backup power supply, so everything was still running. The special team needed to completely hack the security system of the Bank of Japan. The control center is in the third room on the left on the second floor. When Crow rushed in with the special team, some technicians were planning to deliver messages through the network. The special team showed no mercy and killed everyone in the control center one by one. Then he took the prepared USB flash drive and inserted it into the interface. The computer virus quickly invaded the entire system, and the entire Bank of Japan security system was paralyzed. Owen, are you done with that? Zhang Dongzio's voice sounded from the intercom on Crow's waist. Over. 0, you can take action, Crow said with a smile. At this time, another group of Ultramen came at the door of the Bank of Japan. This group of Ultramen all had various tools in their hands and quickly walked towards the vault. On the way to the vault, there are steel gates. This team is to deal with the steel gates. Walking to the first steel door, Zhang Dongzio took off his somewhat small Ultraman mask and muttered in a low voice, "What a stupid Crow, did you buy a child's toy? With this piece of shit, it can reveal me half a face." Then he looked at his watch. 5 minutes had passed. According to the elder brother's scheduled time, it could not exceed 15 minutes. He needed to work harder. Boss Sparks suddenly appeared from the flame cutter. Zhang Dongzio put on his goggles and started cutting the steel door. The combined time of the first line of defense and the second line of defense only took 5 minutes, which was much better than expected. However, there was one more steel door than planned, which delayed a lot of time. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 570. Owen, so slow. Crow came downstairs with his people and saw Zhang Dongzio leading his team to cut the steel door. Zhang Dongzio rolled his eyes, "There is an extra alloy door, why don't you come?" Crow. "How many times have I told you to call me by your code name? Okay, how about you come?" Owen. Crow waved his hand, "Forget it, this kind of unskilled job is not suitable for me." Zhang Dongzio glared at the Crow. He had no time to pay attention to the crow. It had already exceeded the estimated time. If he didn't hurry up, the plan would easily fail. Okay, Zhang Dongzhou said softly when he felt the alloy door was loose. When Crow heard this, he immediately became serious and took out the walkie-talkie. Brother, it's done. Li Qing put on a mask outside the Ryan gate, got out of the car and tidied his clothes. Take him with you and let's go. The younger brothers immediately escorted Shuxi Xiao, who was also wearing a mask, and followed Li Qing. The contact between Li Qing's leather shoes and the marble tiles was loud, but no one in the lobby of the Bank of Japan dared to raise their heads and lay on the ground like quails. Li Qing didn't stop, and went straight through the collapsed steel doors to the treasury door. Brother! Brother! Crow and Zhang Dongzhou shouted softly. Well, open it. Immediately, a younger brother picked up Kenichi and Bei's eyes from the jar and pointed them at the small hole in the middle. Beep, iris recognition is in progress. Iris recognition successful. Click. There was a soft sound, and the door lock of the vault opened. A young man immediately stepped forward, turned the ring, and then pulled hard, and the round and heavy alloy door opened with a sound. What caught everyone's attention were piles of US dollars and Japanese yen wrapped in moisture-proof paper placed on low wooden shelves. The entire vault exuded the ink scent of banknotes. A group of people walked into the vault, and even the well-informed Zhang Dongzhou and Crow were dazzled by so many banknotes. But what opened their eyes was the stacks of huge gold bricks not far behind the banknotes. They were used to seeing small yellow croakers and large yellow croakers, but this was their first time seeing such a big gold brick. Li Qing chuckled, "Don't be stunned, move quickly." Several teams of boys acted at the same time and began to carry gold bars and US dollars. The portable electric truck had stopped at the door of the vault. As for the remaining yen, it was abandoned directly due to time constraints. Under the tree, let's go. Li Qing glanced at the hill under the tree. Xiao Shan under the tree nodded and led the people towards the direction of the secret library. There are more than 10 secret vaults in the vault, and it seems that many rich people store important items here. The hill under the tree stopped in the middle of the last row. This is it. Although he had the key in his hand, Comedian never let him in, and always made him wait outside the door. Crow, open the door. Crow nodded, took out the keys, put them together, inserted them into the keyhole, and turned them with some difficulty. The door of the secret room opened, and Li Qing and others stood at the door of the secret room and looked inside. The space inside the secret room is not large, about 10 square meters in size. Brother, I'll go in first. Zhang Dongzhou glanced at the hill under the tree and whispered. He was afraid that there might be some mechanism or something inside, which would be unacceptable if it hurt his eldest brother. Well, be careful. Li Qing nodded. Zhang Dongzhou walked in. The space inside was smaller than expected. The table at the 11 o'clock position was filled with stacks of US dollars, euros, Japanese yen, and other odds and ends. Zhang Dongzhou didn't even look at it, and went directly to the northeast corner. According to the hill under the tree, the most important thing was the things placed there. He opened the unlocked alloy cabinet. Inside was a pile of neatly coded information. Under the information were several bearer checks from Swiss banks. Zhang Dongzhou took out everything inside without saying a word. After Zhang Dongzhou came out, an imperceptible smile appeared on Xiaoshan's face under the tree. Just as Li Qing and others picked up the information and looked at it, a shrill alarm suddenly sounded from the door of the treasury. Then the alloy door of the vault closed quickly. Seeing that something was wrong, the boys on the outside pulled out and those on the inside pushed out, but they still did not prevent the vault door from closing. Until the alloy door was closed, Zhang Dongzhou could still vaguely hear the shouts of the boy outside. Ha ha ha. Xiao Shan laughed loudly under the tree. Finally, I finally tricked you into coming in. I will die with no regrets. It turned out that he had planned everything long ago, and the purpose of bringing Li Qing and others to the secret room was to lock Li Qing and others in the vault. He knew that this was the only way to bring Li Qing to justice. Idiot, the door of the secret room has an infrared sensor. As long as you walk out of the secret room and don't close it for 20 seconds, the vault door will automatically close. The vault door can only be opened from the outside, and Kenichi Abe's eyes are inside. You are waiting to die? The hill under the tree is not afraid of anything now, so he simply tells everything. Boom, the vault door roared. It was obvious that the boy outside was trying his best to blow up the door. Damn it, damn you, I want you to die. Crow pointed the gun directly at Xiaoshan's forehead under the tree. Xiaoshan under the tree closed his eyes calmly. It's worth it to be buried with you. Li Qing patted Crow's arm to calm him down. Tisk tisk, it's very hidden. Not bad, a little clever, Li Qing applauded towards the hill under the tree. After hearing Li Qing's words, Shuxia Xiaoshan opened his eyes and said with some resentment, "Humph, don't pretend to be wise. The special forces have surrounded you outside. You can't escape." Li Qing smiled and shook his head. Didn't you notice that 2 of my men were not there? Special forces. The leader of the special forces you mentioned went to attend the funeral of Kenichi Anbei. Why else do you think I chose to act today? Li Qing had already arranged assassins from the New World Hotel to secretly ambush at several surrounding high points, waiting for the arrival of the special forces. The moment Li Qing got out of the car, the sharpshooters of these special forces had already been killed by the assassins. Shuxia Xiaoshan sneered. He didn't believe what Li Qing said, and he calculated the time. The nearby police station had already noticed something was wrong. Li Qing and his men must be caught in the trap. And the vault is closed, and no signal can be transmitted. As far as he knows, the entire vault wall is wrapped in metal, and it is impossible to open it from the outside by force. Even C4 can't blow it up. Li Qing still looked unconcerned, picked up the information and started reading. Tisk tisk, awesome, awesome. Aren't you afraid that the American father will know these information? He was stunned when he saw the title of the information. These things were more exaggerated than he thought. Xiao Ari's ambitions were scary. Aren't you afraid? Xiao Shan under the tree was a little puzzled. Li Qing glanced at him and continued to look through the materials. You may not know that the top executives of the Bank of Japan were afraid of emergencies, and left a back door when they built the vault.